Now, we also have a lead guitar part from Andrew, which is amazing. Played his butt off. Okay, so that said, what are we doing treatment-wise? So we have a couple different delays going. Let's look at delay number 1. And this is the shorter delay. You'll see I'm using the X Echo, which is the tape emulation. And I'm using a little diffusion, quite a bit of saturation. Feedback is turned completely down, and I have the high frequency cut back a little bit. 100% wet because it's being used as an aux send and return kind of thing. So this is the short one. I'm using just enough that you miss it if it's gone. And then I'm bringing in a longer guy. Let's take a look at this one. All right, here we go. This is a quarter note, by the way. Very cool sounding, right? So the same kind of deal, lots of saturation, cutting back the high frequency, and wow and flutter kind of in the middle. So there's some modulation going on. So here's both of those two. I'm going to bypass them and bring them back so you can kind of hear the effect. Okay. And the only other thing that was missing a little bit, I kind of treat the lead guitar at times like I would a lead vocal. Sometimes it's that it has the most treatment, right? Because it's the star of the show at any time. So we just make it sound bigger and more glamorous and glorious than maybe it really is. So I was putting a little bit of reverb on it too. And I was wanting a plate sound. So this is a new product here. We got the SSL PlateVerb. I was using 2 seconds as our decay time. The color, I was leaning just a little to the dark side. You can go really bright or really dark, but I was somewhere in between here. Really not much else to talk about it. Just real basic settings, pretty much where it came up by default. It just kind of sounded good. So here's a little bit of that on there. Let me mute the delays and use just the reverb. And I'll use too much so you can kind of get a sound for feel for the sound of the PlateVerb. Okay, that's that. Let's put it back where it belongs, a little lower and with all the reverbs. I'm sorry, with the reverb and delay. So the electric guitar to me sounds like a star. In fact, it's probably just a little wet, honestly. I probably would cut back that reverb and the longest decay just a little bit more. All right, now let's talk about the effects that's going on the lead vocal. So James here, let's take a look at him. So let me mute everything that's going on because I don't even remember what all I used. But I know I started with a stereo widening trick. Which here I have the X delay. So kind of think of this as the old harmonizer trick, kind of the micro pitch shift kind of thing. So I've got one side delayed by 12 milliseconds, one side delayed by 22, and I have them hard panned. And you can kind of mess with it. I have the high frequency turned down to about 6K and a little bit of diffusion. But the key is the modulation. Because that you don't want just an exact duplicate coming back. You want it to be kind of out of pitch with what's coming up in the middle. All right. So let me use a little too much of that and give you the idea of what's happening.
Now you've been warned, I've got a thorn stuck in my pride, and I just might.
It's one of those things where basically you turn it up until you can hear it and then turn it down. But it's better as a result. It just adds a little bit of a stereo thing that makes the vocal just feel a little bit bigger and more important. And that's a trick that's been around forever. But using the delay within the complete bundle, we can access that trick. Okay, so let's take a look at delay number 1 here. This is my shorter delay, and this is a real common thing that I do. I use a digital delay for my shorter, brighter, slappier kind of delay. Um, and I a lot of times pan that in a little bit. You'll see here I'm using just the center, so it's a little more mono. And sometimes I'll go, let's say 10 and 2. Um, but then that leaves me the room to go darker on my long delay and wider on my long delay. So it gives me depth. It gives me like these layers. I have this dry vocal in the middle. I have a shorter, brighter reverb or delay right here. And then back here, I have the darkest, longest delay. So I'm building this pyramid, like this triangle of depth and dimension. So here is just the short delay going through the X delay.
Now you've been warned, I've got a thorn stuck in my pride, and I just might bring up the past of, is that something that you hide? Well, not tonight.
Okay, so no diffusion. I want this to be kind of like a slap in a sense. I'm not looking for a roomy kind of thing, although I could. And let me just show you, because I think this is an awesome tool that's built into the X delay and X echo.
Now you've been warned, I've got a thorn stuck in my pride, and I just might.
I have mixed songs where I didn't even use reverb. I just used the diffusion and the ambience that's built into these echoes, and it was all I needed on something that needed to be really in your face. Just a really, really cool feature. So I'm just using one, although we can do ping pongs. We can have 4 different delays going and bouncing around. So it's a lot of fun. Plus, we can adjust the level. Here's a big deal. This is a big deal. We can adjust the level of each decay. How many times have you wanted that in your career? A lot, right? I know that's one of those things that always drives me crazy is I want this one echo and this multi-echo to be louder or quieter, and I can't, and that drives me nuts. So I'm really glad that now we can using that tool. All right, my next delay is the long delay. Here, I'm going tape.
Now you've been warned, I've got a thorn stuck in my pride, and I just might bring up the past of, is that some?
Now that's mix level. Let me boost it way up here so you can kind of really hear what's going on under the hood.
Now you've been warned, I've got a thorn stuck in my pride, and I just might bring up the.
So you'll hear that it's a lot different than that digital delay we were hearing a while ago. It's round and it's warm and it's thick, just a very different sounding thing. Again, that's how I'm creating that dimension. So a couple things are going on. I am using the diffusion, and what that's doing is allowing the reverb or the reverb effect on the delay to push that delay further away from us as a listener, which is good. That's creating that depth, that 3D feel that we want. And I'm darkening it here with the built-in EQ that we have. And I'm also widening it. So this is a really cool trick. So on your shorter delays, right? You can bring those in a little more mono, or our longer delays, we can make them appear like they're outside the speakers a little bit. So that's, but it's not going to distract from the guitars because they're darker, if that makes any sense. So again, it's all about creating this wall of texture and dimension. And I am using some wow and flutter, just a little bit of feedback, and that's the sound of that. So let's talk about one other thing. And there's this moment going into the solo where James lets out a big old scream, and they wanted that to kind of trail and repeat into the handoff of the electric guitar solo. So let's just see what we did here to create that. Okay, so what I had going on there was X Echo, the tape version, because I didn't want it to be too stark. It's a half note. And the main thing, it's got quite a bit of diffusion on it. It's got quite a bit of saturation. But when we were mixing on 9000s and 4000s, our reverb returns and our delay returns, we could route them to channels on the desk, right? So we could get hands-on EQ real quick and compression and things like that, which is really cool. And we can still do that in the box. We can put plugins like Channel Strip 2, after our delays or reverbs you know, get more hands-on than what just maybe the high pass or low pass options we have within the reverb or delay. So here you can see I was adding a little bit more mid-range, and it looks like I was adding a little compression to a fast attack compression too. Let's check.
No, no.
Yeah. I was also rolling off some top end. So personally, I'm a fan of making things easy on myself, just like it was back in the day. If it's that reverb's a little dark, I just reach up here and turn just a little more high frequency or high mid into it. We all know that some effects, wading through the menus, wading through the weeds to get them to sound the way we want them to sound is difficult, right? So rather than learn some of these sub menus of some of these reverb units, I would prefer personally to bring up a patch I like. Maybe I know I like this plate or I like this hall, this whatever, but it's a little dark or it's a little bright, whatever the case may be, and just follow it with something like Channel Strip 2 or the 4KE. You know, all these plugins I know like the back of my hand. I've got many years of experience on these channel strips. So then I bring up that plate, it's a little bright or whatever the case may be, just real quickly move and go on to the next thing, hands-on, using the UC1. And even if you don't have the UC1, if you have a main tool like this that you use, you're just going to inherently know it much better than you will all these other sub pages of reverb. So you can, even with the mouse, you're going to be more fast, more effective. The Channel Strip 2 just happens to be very clean for this kind of a thing, very DSP friendly. So it's kind of my main tool for that. All right. I believe that brings us to the end of our show. So thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown of Them Dirty Roses. You Can't. I know I did. I've always loved this song, loved the band, and I love these control surfaces. I love 360. I love SSL Complete. And I will say that as of today, I love SSL Complete even more. Having the 4KE, man, I mean, come on. It's brown knob. It's black knob. It's orange knob. It's the 4KE, bro. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like that thing that I want on every mix, on every song somewhere, sometimes even everywhere. So having hands-on ability too, I'm a happy man right now. You can probably tell by the tone of my voice and the smile on my face. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and happy mixing.